Hello and welcome to Sunday Scriptures. This is episode 1. My name's Rock Egan.
And I'm Quinn Gianoli, and thank you for joining us today. The point of this podcast is going to be to kind of get into the heart of the readings from last Sunday's readings, and kind of understand them, and get our point of view, and hopefully in the future get some special guest point of views. So, Rock, with that being said, the first reading.
Let's hop right in. Third Sunday of Lent was Sunday. So the first reading is from the book of Exodus. And God spoke all these words, saying, I am the Lord your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make yourself a graven image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is in the earth beneath, or that is in the water under the earth. You should not bow down to them or serve them, for I am the Lord your God, and I am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to the third and the fourth generation of those who hate me, but showering steadfast love of thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you, or your son, or your daughter, or your manservant, or your maidservant, or your cattle shall not do any work. For in 6 days the Lord made the heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day, and hallowed it. Honor your father and your mother, for your days may be long in the land of the Lord your God gives you. You shall not kill, shall not commit adultery, you shall not steal, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his manservant, or maidservant, or his ox, or his ass, or anything that is your neighbor.
So, instantly, I think this is one of the biggest readings of the Old Testament. Right? This is the Ten Commandments. If you didn't pick up on that, it is all of them laying out the law for the Jews in Egypt.
One of my favorite things about this reading, about the Ten Commandments, is kind of how Moses gets it. And I think that we forget about this a lot of times, but like Moses went up to a mountain by himself, alone, where no one was, and then he encountered God. And I think this is important, especially as we're in Lent here, Quinn, is being able to find that the ability to be alone, the ability to block out distractions, and just listen to God. I think that's so incredibly important.
Yeah, and this is something that I literally just thought about. It's kind of almost reminiscent of Jesus in the desert. Jesus being the new Moses, the new Adam, he's the new everything, basically. I mean, he's the new church. So I really love this. One question that I kind of had about it, and I don't know if you know the answer to it. It's I am a jealous God. I thought jealousy was a bad thing, but now God is jealous. And the way that I've been thinking about that is, I think this is God saying, I am so great that like I'm insulted if you praise anybody else.
Well, again, it's, God gave us free will because he loves us and he wants us to love him back. And, it pains him, it hurts God when we sin and when we disregard him. So I think that is really just him saying, like, guys, I love you so much. Like, don't diss me. Like, I love you guys.
Come
Like,
to me.
yeah, come to me, basically.
Yeah, and I think that image of him being like he is alone in the desert. I don't think he's necessarily young at this point either. So he probably made this incredible trek, up a mountain.
Of course.
Yeah, and connecting that with Lent, he listened to God. He found solitude, and he really he got one of the greatest teachings that I think everybody at least knows, like one of these. I mean, you shall not kill is pretty basic.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it's also important to think about the seventh day as the Sabbath, the Lord's day, not working at all. Because I mean, Sunday's when I do most of my homework. Like, full disclosure, I'm sorry, so sorry to all the teachers who may be listening. if not Monday morning. But yeah, I love this passage. Listening to it, rereading it, it's just fascinating.
Well, let's take a look at the second reading here. This is a reading from the letter to the Corinthians. For Jews demand signs and Greeks seek wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and folly to Gentiles. But to those who are called both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. Quinn, I'm going to read this last part one more time because I just absolutely love this. Listen to this. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men. God in his, at his lowest point, in his deepest foolishness, like he even has any, or his deepest weaknesses, is so far stronger than man. And this is like we need to seek God. Like we need to seek wisdom, and we need to seek signs, because no matter what it is about God, he's so much better than us. And I think that Paul writing to the Corinthians here is just it's just great.
Yeah, and I love that last line because it's on my worst day and on your best day. Like I'm sorry,
Yeah.
it's not like I'm God. It's not fair. And I think that's I struggled with finding stuff in this. You'll find in the gospel. I love the gospel this week, but the Jews demand signs and the Greeks seek wisdom. So the way that I took that is right. The Jews are looking for the signs of the next prophet. The Greeks are kind of like those philosophers looking inward. But we preach Christ crucified, which directly conflicts with he is the second coming.
It's a trump card basically to
Yeah.
everything that they're saying.
So yeah, I really did. It's short and sweet. I love the long readings. It feels like we always have one short one.
Yeah.
It's kind of a bummer. But yeah, I really did like this reading.
All right, let's look at our gospel now. A gospel, from John. The Passover of the Jews was at hand, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. In the temple, he found those who were selling oxen and sheep and pigeons, and the money changers at their businesses. And making a whip of cords, he drove them all with the sheep and the oxen out of the temple, and he poured out the coins of the money changers and overturned their tables. And he told those who sold the pigeons, "Take these things away. You shall not make my Father's house a house of trade." His disciples remembered that it was written, "Zeal for thy house will consume me." The Jews then said to him, "What sign have you to show us for doing this?" Jesus answered them, "Destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews said, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you will raise it up in only 3 days?" But he spoke of the temple of his body. When therefore he had raised from the dead, his disciples remembered that he had said this, and they believed the scripture and the word which Jesus had spoken. And when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs which he did. But Jesus did not trust himself to them, because he knew all men and needed no one to bear witness of man, for he himself knew what was in man. All right, Quinn, you've been waiting for this. You've been waiting for the gospel so far.
So
go ahead.
I love everything about this gospel. I think the coolest part is seeing Jesus as human with that righteous rage. Give you a little alliteration there. He is upset. He made a whip, and he's driving out the sheep, the oxen, and the money changers. He's just hitting animals. It's everybody. And you can't really say like, oh, why did he do this? Because as I found out in our gospel, or our homily from the gospel, this where they were doing it was a common place for Gentiles who were trying to learn the faith.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of, we're not going to let you come into our faith unless you do the money changers, because they couldn't pay with the Greek coins because it had Caesar on it, who was a pagan. All these things, and take these things away. You shall not make my Father's house a house of trade. yeah, he's setting the law. This is for worship. It's what Mr. Candidate talks about, right? That the WAC isn't the most sacred space because it's supposed to be a gym, right? You can't make a holy place two things. The chapel isn't gonna have like a party in it because it's a chapel.
Quinn, I'm so glad you brought that up because I was just about to talk about what we've been talking about in class, and that, this temple, such a sacred space is being desecrated basically by, being used for worldly things, right? In this scenario, they're using the temple for worldly things, for money, right? And for trade and for coin, instead of truly using it for its purpose, which is to grow in faith, to worship God. And so I love how Jesus just like pops in. It's like,
Yeah.
get out of here.
Yeah, like the perfect man is angry.
Yeah.
So you know that there's an issue somewhere. And then probably my favorite line from this is, "It has taken 46 years to build this temple, and you will raise it up in 3 days." And I kind of imagine Jesus being like, "Okay, you didn't get that.
Yeah.
Like, this whole prophet."
He's like, hold up, guys. Let me say what I was trying to say here.
Yeah, and I love that because not only is it's the temple of his body, but it's also his church. It's how long has the Jewish faith been around at this point? Thousands, or probably not thousands, but a long time. And he's saying what took forever to build up this faith, I'm going to build it up again in my image in 3 days. And that's exactly what he did. I mean, it's kind of like Babe Ruth calling a shot.
Yeah.
He did.
He did. He called it a shot.
He did it.
It's so important while we're here in Lent to remember that is the end. That is our end goal of this long season, is to become part of that reconstruction of the temple.
Right. We be a building block in God's grandest, most beautiful temple. And that is so important about Lent because it's every year. We know how it ends. There's an Easter egg hunt. The person in white rises with a light flashing on them. At least that was that St. Malachi. But losing
Easter play.
Yeah, the little Easter play. I was a Roman guard.
Oh boy.
I'm not proud of that. I've since changed. But it's something that we all need to know is we are developing our faith. This isn't just a yearly thing. This is something that we grow and we slowly build our own temple in the temple of God. And then I think just the last few lines also really stuck out. Everything stuck out, really. Many believed in his name when they saw the signs which he did, but Jesus did not trust himself to them because he knew all men and needed no one to bear witness of men, for he himself knew what was in man. Because he is a man. I mean, I think this is probably one of the...
True God, true man.
I think this was probably one of the biggest scriptures that they went back to when they were saying, well, was God fully man and fully divine? And I thought that was very poignant. He is human.
He is human.
And while being human, he's also this divine being who is the church. So that's about all I had to go for that. But I thought we had some great readings this week.
We had some great readings. We had a great gospel. And if you want to hear more of this, be sure to tune in next week. We've already kind of looked at the readings. I'm excited, Quinn.
The first reading, the enemies burned down the temple of God, demolished the walls of Jerusalem.
I'm ready. I don't know about you. I'm ready.
Looks really fun.
Well, thank you for joining us today. Once again, my name is Rocky Egan.
And I'm Quinn Giannoli.
And this is episode 1, Sunday Scriptures.
Thanks so much.